What if I told you that some of America's most accomplished doctors, people trained at Harvard, Johns Hopkins, or the Mayo Clinic, are quietly sending their children 8,000 miles across the Pacific, not to London, Tokyo, or Sydney, but to a place many Americans barely consider, the Philippines. Yes, the same country most think of for tropical beaches, vibrant jeepneys, and karaoke nights rather than world-class medical schools. At first, it doesn't make sense. Why would highly educated, successful doctors, people who could afford nearly any school in the world, choose a country some might label developing? Why trade ivy-covered halls for the humid corridors of Manila or Cebu? The answer is more surprising than you think. And it starts with Dr. Stephen Miller, a trauma surgeon from Minnesota, a man trained in Boston, reserved, serious, and not often seen smiling in photos. The kind of confidence that moves ahead of you rather than walking beside you. For years, prestige was everything to Dr. Miller: titles, publications, board certifications. But when it came to his only son, Noah, something changed. Noah struggled. Despite his intelligence, the pressure of the U.S. medical system was crushing him. One evening, after Noah experienced yet another panic attack, Dr. Miller took a solitary walk in the frigid Minnesota snow. No coat, no phone, just a head full of questions. When he returned, he searched something he never expected to type: affordable international medical schools with strong clinical training. One of the first results caught his eye: St. Luke's College of Medicine in Quezon City, Philippines. Initially skeptical, curiosity won. As he explored, he discovered not just lower tuition, but an American-accredited curriculum, and student stories that struck him deeply. Students described professors who knew their names, clinical exposure starting in the first year, and an education that balanced science with empathy. Then he saw it: a photo of a Filipino medical student holding the hand of an elderly patient in a rural hospital. No monitors, no gloves, just eye contact, compassion, and prayer. The caption read, "He had no family, so I stayed with him until his last breath." Noah was there in the photo. 2 weeks later, they booked tickets to Manila. The arrival was unforgettable. The heat hit like a wave. The traffic moved like a chaotic dance. And yet, everywhere they looked, people smiled. At mistakes, strangers, delays. For the first time, Noah didn't have to perform. He was asked to dream. They hadn't even enrolled yet, but they sensed this place was different. Over the following months, more students from the U.S., children of ER doctors, pediatricians, researchers, joined them. And in the Philippines, with all its imperfections, they found something unexpectedly human: connection, empathy, and purpose. It wasn't just an escape from the U.S. system. It was a journey toward a more grounded, compassionate approach to medicine. It was about rediscovering why they wanted to heal people in the first place. One evening, at a tiny roadside eatery in Quezon City, Dr. Miller watched his son laughing with classmates from 5 different countries, half speaking in a mix of English and Tagalog. He thought about how different this was from his own medical training. He remembered the silent, tense hallways of his U.S. medical school, the pressure, the endless competition, the fatigue. And then he looked at Noah, eating fried chicken with his hands, surrounded by fellow students who were exhausted, yet somehow genuinely happy. Dr. Miller didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, he understood. This wasn't a step down, it was a step forward. And Noah's story is just the beginning. What started as one worried father searching for an alternative has grown into a quiet global shift. American doctors, once skeptical, are now seeing something they never expected: the heart of medicine beating somewhere they had never imagined: the Philippines. Soon, the world will take notice. The first months were not easy. Noah came from a small town where winter lasted half the year and everyone knew your business by the second cup of coffee. In the Philippines, everything felt strange. The heat didn't just sit on his skin, it sank into his bones. Jeeps blared music at 7 a.m. Street vendors called him kuya before he even understood what it meant. He missed home-cooked meals, quiet libraries, and the crunch of snow underfoot. Every challenge revealed something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose, human connection, and the joy of learning medicine in a way that reminded him why he wanted to heal in the first place. It started with his classmates. Some were Filipino, some Nigerian, some Korean, a few fellow Americans. But in the lecture halls of that small, determined university, titles didn't matter. What counted was whether you showed up, whether you cared. Noah found himself caring more than he expected. The cadavers were called silent teachers, and before making a single incision, the class bowed their heads in prayer. It caught Noah off guard. In the US, such a moment might have been replaced by disclaimers or debates about faith. But here, silence meant gratitude, respect for the life that had once inhabited the body before them. Later that week, Noah called his father. "They prayed before we opened the body," he said quietly. There was a pause. Did that feel strange? No, Noah said. It felt right. Dr. Miller stayed silent for a long moment, gripping the phone. Something inside him was starting to shift. Back home, colleagues had scoffed. One joked, "What's next? Med school in Vietnam?" And that human side grew clearer with every call from Noah. One story stayed with him. During a rural rotation in the provinces, Noah was assigned to a small-town hospital with one ambulance, no CT scan, and sporadic electricity. The doctors were stretched thin. Noah was supposed to observe, but the lead physician turned to him. "Can you hold pressure here?" His hands shook, but he pressed down. 2 hours later, after an emergency delivery in a sweltering room, the baby lived. The mother was safe. The doctor clapped Noah on the back. "You did good, document." For the first time, Noah didn't feel like a student. He felt like a healer. Back home, Dr. Miller read those words over and over. He began quietly sharing the experience with other parents, at church potlucks, hospital lounges, PDA meetings. Some didn't understand, but some leaned in. One couple from Chicago followed his lead. In the US, she was told she wasn't competitive enough for medical school. Her GPA was slightly low. They saw her determination. They gave her a chance. Ellie thrived. As more stories emerged, a quiet network began to form. The Philippines wasn't just an affordable alternative. It was a place that valued compassion before credentials, grit before grades. Yes, it was messy, sometimes chaotic, but it was real. Noah, Ellie, and their classmates learned in hospitals where doctors worked with very little, where one nurse might care for 30 patients, where IVs were propped up by coat hangers. In that rawness, they found strength, ingenuity, heart. One Filipino classmate, Marco, once told Noah, "Here, you can't hide behind machines. You have to look people in the eyes. You have to feel their pain." It stayed with Noah. Every time he returned home for break, something had changed. He walked with purpose, listened more than he spoke, and even helped at his dad's hospital one summer. A nurse noticed, "He's not just smart. He sees people." Dr. Miller smiled. That was the difference. In the US, medical education had become a marathon of memorization, exams, and prestige. In the Philippines, it was a pilgrimage, not just toward knowledge, but toward character. Especially for parents in the medical field, that realization mattered more than anything. Because they weren't just raising doctors, they were raising humans. And as the months went by, more American families followed the same path. Quietly at first, cautiously, but with conviction. They weren't turning their backs on American medicine. They were rebuilding its heart, with values they found thousands of miles away, in a country where nurses pray before their shifts, where families bring pots of food to the ER, where children call strangers ate and kuya, as if family goes beyond blood. The Philippines, with all its contradictions and noise, had offered something rare. And for these families, that was exactly what had been missing. There was a moment near the end of Noah's third year, not dramatic, not part of any ceremony, Just an ordinary Tuesday in a public hospital in Cavite. He had just finished assisting a delivery, sweat sticking to his back. The hospital had run out of sterile gloves. The ceiling fan spun lazily, doing more for sound than for air. Then he saw a young boy crying down the hall. Barefoot, alone, holding a paper bag soaked through the bottom. Without thinking, Noah crouched beside him and asked, slowly, "Anong pangalan mo?" The boy blinked at the foreign accent. Samuel P. He was waiting for his mother, brought in with suspected dengue. He didn't understand what was happening, only that she was sick and he had been told to sit and wait. So Noah sat with him. 10 minutes. 20. A nurse passed by and smiled at the sight. A foreign medical student, still damp from a delivery, sitting cross-legged on the floor next to a frightened child. Not charting, not checking his phone. Just sitting. Later, once Samuel's mother was stabilized, Noah stood up. His knees ached, his stomach growled, but something inside him felt whole. That moment would never appear on his transcript. No grade.no evaluation. But that moment, more than any exam, confirmed why he was here, why his father had taken a risk. Dr. Miller visited again during Noah's final year. Graduation was coming. Banners hung across campus showing faces from every corner of the world: Filipino, Indian, Iranian, Chinese, African American, Latino. All future doctors. Father and son walked the campus one last time. By the chapel near the gate, Dr. Miller paused. He had walked that path once before, weighed down by doubt. Now everything felt different. Or perhaps he was different. Noah pointed to the courtyard where his class met for 5 a.m. study sessions. The hallway where a Filipino professor, stern, wise, fiercely loving, had become like a second mother to them. Dr. Miller took it all in. Then came graduation. No orchestra. No celebrity speeches, just trembling hands, proud parents, and the hum of hope in the air. When Noah's name was called, Dr. Miller stood. And for a moment, he wasn't a trauma surgeon. He wasn't the man who once scoffed at this path. He was simply a father, overflowing with pride. Watching his son bow to accept his diploma, surrounded by classmates who had learned to care without ego, to heal without machines, to serve without forgetting the human in front of them. Dr. Miller whispered, "We made the right choice." After that, word spread faster. News outlets ran features, forums buzzed. Guidance counselors paid attention, and American parents, especially those who knew medicine, started asking a new question. Not which school has the best ranking, but where will my child become the kind of doctor patients remember? Years later, Noah matched into a residency back in the U.S., at one of the very hospitals where his father had trained. There were extra hurdles, paperwork, questions about international training. But Noah answered with stories. Stories of delivering babies without machines. Stories of families singing hymns at bedside. Stories of learning triage by flashlight. He didn't run from his background. He embraced it. And soon, patients began asking for him by name. Nurses said he didn't just finish rounds, he connected. He remembered details that he stayed late. He prayed with families who had no one else. He had been shaped in a place where the body and soul are never separated, and that made him different. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, schools that once quietly accepted American students now had waiting lists. Parents from California, Texas, New York booked flights to tour campuses in Davao, Iloilo, Pampanga. What was once dismissed as a backup plan had become a beacon. Filipino professors, long overlooked, now trained future leaders of hospitals across the world. Local nurses, known for resilience, became models not only of skill but of compassion. Communities that once saw foreign students as temporary visitors now embraced them as family. About remembering that world-class doctors aren't always shaped in the richest countries, but in the most human ones. As Noah's story spread, a quiet truth rose with it. The Philippines, with all its beautiful imperfections, wasn't just healing its own. It was teaching the world how to heal again. Years later, Noah returned, not for vacation, but to teach a short course. He said it was to give back, but the truth was deeper. The smell of fried bananas near the gate. The patients who held your hand with both of theirs. The nurses who prayed before shift change. The janitors who remembered every student's name. In America, medicine had become faster, colder, more efficient. But in the Philippines, the sacred parts of healing were still alive. One was a shy girl from Ohio, gripping her stethoscope like armor. "My dad mentioned you," she said. Dr. Chong, one of the skeptics. Yet here was his daughter, beginning her journey in the same place that saved his. Not ashamed, proud. Proud that their children were becoming doctors who didn't flinch at scarcity, who didn't look away from suffering, who knew how to listen when medicine had no easy answer. The Philippines had offered this quietly, humbly. It simply kept giving, and maybe that's the real twist. This isn't just a story about Americans finding a better way. It's about the Philippines, long underestimated, standing at the heart of something extraordinary. A place where science and faith walk hand in hand, where family extends beyond blood. On his last evening before flying home, Noah stood outside the chapel. The sky burned orange, the wind smelled of rain. The noise that once overwhelmed him now felt like music. He whispered softly, "Thank you." Because in the end, what American families discovered wasn't just a place to study medicine. They found a country that still believes healing is human. That compassion is power. That love belongs in the room. If this story touched you, if it made you see the Philippines or the path to becoming a doctor in a new light, don't let it stop here. Tap the like button so more people find this message. Subscribe for more powerful stories that honor the Filipino spirit. And in the comments, tell us, would you send your child to study in the Philippines, or have you already made that choice? Your story might inspire the next one.